The Carolina Panthers are not playing around this offseason. They have provided Bryce Young with everything he needs to make a huge leap in year two. We discuss the biggest veteran winners following the 2024 NFL Draft on today's episode of Locked On Fantasy Football.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen every day. I'm one of your co-hosts, Michelle Magdziuk, and when I'm not doing this, I'm a researcher and fantasy analyst with NFL Network.
And I'm your other co-host, Vinnie Iyer, and I'm not doing this. I'm writing about NFL fantasy betting, draft, free agency, all that you can think of for sportingnews.com. So all the post-draft stuff is there. And looking forward to talking more about the draft and the fallout on today's show.
Today's episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. I admit it, I have a competitive side, and I am a big fan of Monopoly Go, the mobile hit twist on classic Monopoly. So join your friends and download Monopoly Go, now free on the App Store or Google Play. All right, so we have all the landing spots for the rookies, right? So we know who landed in good spots, maybe a little rougher spots, but who won in terms of the veteran players after free agency, after the NFL draft, who is now in a much better situation than maybe we thought they would be heading into the 2024 season? Who is your biggest winner? Let's go gold medal winner, silver, and bronze. So who's your gold medal veteran winner in terms of fantasy football for 2024?
Yeah, I got to go with Justin Herbert. And I talked a little bit about the options that he has now in the passing game. They added 3 rookies here. Ladd McConkey, I broke him down there in the round 2 and round 3 analysis yesterday, Michelle. For the listeners, we also broke down round 1 where they added Joe Alt as their offensive tackle to put with Rashawn Slater. So Justin Herbert, I think this offense, we still are figuring it out. I think we look at Greg Roman, okay, he was with Lamar Jackson, he was with Tyrod Taylor. Okay, the quarterback is going to run around, and there could be more opportunities for that because Herbert is a pretty nice athlete for a guy his size. But when you look at it, they went down the line and said, what do we need here? And I think Joe Alt, in a weird way, was a really good thing because it allows Justin Herbert to sit back there and throw downfield a little bit more, which has not been the case. He's been having to run around and check down. That's why we've seen a lot of volume for Austin Eckler and Keenan Allen. So that kind of set it up to be very well protected as we go forward. And you look at this rushing attack, I get it. We have Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins. Basically, the Ravens' backfield has moved to Los Angeles. But that tells me that he might just open it up and throw it here more than we think. And I thought they might think about tight end here, but this also tells me the way they approached it at drafting 3 wide receivers on top of having last year's first rounder Quentin Johnston and Josh Palmer, that they're going to be maybe 11 personnel teams, spread it around and throw it more. And I think Jim Harbaugh and Greg Roman are smart enough to know that they have an elite passing talent in Justin Herbert. I mean, we talked about J.J. McCarthy last year with Michigan and just always kind of being the guy that's in the background, and the running game and defense took care of things. Well, you can't do that in the NFL. You can't hide your quarterback. And I think this is good for Justin Herbert throwing downfield. This is what we need him to do again, not these short passes. Get the ball downfield to these wide receivers. And look, Brendan Rice could be the answer. Cornelius Johnson could step up and also be a key target for him. But just starting with Ladd McConkey, and Palmer's not that bad if you look at it overall. So this looked like a terrible, dire situation as soon as they moved on from Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. But I think they've recovered here pretty well. And I'm starting to get better vibes overall that they're not going to kind of put the square peg in the round hole with Justin Herbert. They're going to say, this guy can fling it. We want to take advantage of that. We're going to run to complement this. And I think they'll have a better running game, and that's going to help him out as well with the play action downfield shot. So I think Herbert, maybe we're discounting a little bit that he's really talented, and he's with 2 really good offensive coaches here.
Yeah, it's hard to call. I'm shocked by your pick, right? Because it's
Yeah.
hard to call Justin Herbert a winner when he loses Keenan Allen and Mike Williams and Gerald Everett and Austin Eckler. Like, that's a lot of pieces to lose. And for them to only really add Ladd McConkey as like a high, either in free agency or in the draft, like high capital, we'll see how good Ladd McConkey can be in the NFL. But I do like it should be a lot more efficient for him, even though he lost those pieces. This offense, and maybe we're not even giving Quentin Johnson a chance. He was a first rounder last year. Maybe he struggled in that particular offense, but it will change. So maybe he'll be better with Ladd. And you brought up Josh Palmer. It's not a bad wide receiver, right? If he's your wide receiver 3, that's a pretty good spot for him to be in. I'm a little bit worried about the run game. We'll see if J.K. Dobbins can stay healthy, but I don't think you want to feed Gus Edwards 250 times. And
that's my point there. Like, I don't think it's going to just be, if we're going to pound these two guys, because that's not going to be your formula for success, right? In your division with Patrick Mahomes, you're going to have to put up the ball. There's going to be some high scoring games. So in a way, we kind of want the running game to be good enough to be complementary, but not be the dominant force there. And I also like maybe Herbert being efficient with the downfield passing, right? If he can get back to 7.5 to 8 yards an attempt, then he's doing more with his passes downfield. And that'll be better as well, because we know this guy can put the ball anywhere, Michelle.
Yeah. Now, my biggest winner, my gold medal winner, it's Bryce Young, because all of it, we're throwing him out, right? We've thrown him out for fantasy. We're like, man, but I think at this point, he has to be a late round draft pick with really high upside. I mean, he was a first overall pick for a reason, because he has a great skill set. And they've done everything now this offseason to completely change his situation. So they brought in new head coach, Dave Canales, who just saved the careers of Geno Smith and Baker Mayfield over the last 2 years. So can he make it back to back to back seasons? We shall see. They spent money on the offensive line and free agency, bringing in 2 new guards and Robert Hunt and Damian Lewis. They traded for veteran wide receiver Deontay Johnson, great separator, great route runner. We know he can handle volume. And then they drafted 3 offensive skill players in the first 4 rounds of the draft, and all really good guys, right? They moved up to take Xavier Legette. That gives them a different type of weapon in their offense. So the big speedster guy, and Carolina loves him. So perfect. And then, so just wide receiver, now you have Deontay Johnson. You still have Adam Thielen. You have Xavier Legette. And then you have Jonathan Mingo from last year's second rounder as well. Now is your wide receiver 4. Like, those are great options around him. They add the best running back in the 2024 draft class in Jonathan Brooks in the second round. They move up to get him. So as soon as he's healthy, I mean, I think that immediately helps the Panthers offense as well. And then they end up landing Jatavian Sanders in the 4th round out of Texas. He falls in this draft. I don't really understand why. He was my second favorite tight end in this class. I absolutely love him. So I'm a Texas Longhorns fan, and he's the best receiving playmaker in that offense last year. It wasn't Xavier Worthy. Definitely was not A.D. Mitchell. It was J.T. Sanders. He had the second most receptions and receiving among FBS tight ends over the last 2 seasons, only behind Brock Bowers. And we have to remember, in 2023, he badly injured his ankle in the middle of the season. He had a high ankle sprain. He had to have surgery. He only missed 2 games, and then he played throughout the injury and still put up huge numbers. This guy is a baller. So they add so many weapons around him. Bryce Young has zero excuse not to put up a really huge second-year season. I think he's a really sneaky fantasy pick this year.
Yeah, and a few things I'll follow up with. It's really hard because I've met Bryce Young, and I think he's an outstanding young man. I met him before the draft, and I'm rooting for him. And it's been hard to hear about him being trashed so much here, local media with the Panthers and all that. The second thing is, I think the Panthers also expect him to come through in year 2. I think the heat is on now, because if they're bad again, they might be looking at Shedeur or Sanders. They're coming out, and they're going to have to think about maybe drafting a quarterback again. So this is a huge year for Bryce Young. He's got to deliver at least decent numbers. Now, Michelle, he has a long way to go up. So there's a lot of room for improvement there from really the bottom as a quarterback option in fantasy. So, yeah, I think there is some promise there with some of the weapons. He was not really in a kind of consistent offense last year. They moved on from Frank Reich. It was a hard transition. Dave Canales, we know, turned Baker Mayfield around. He turned Geno Smith around. He is the quarterback whisperer. That's why they brought him in here, and he's got some weapons. So I still think this team is probably going to be a little bit run-oriented, and when Brooks is healthy, he's going to take over this backfield and interior line. When you do that, you're also saying we want to upgrade our running game. But also Canales brings that deep threat. That's why they went after Legette, because that's what they want to do. Run the ball, play action, throw downfield. Bryce Young is very similar in size to Baker Mayfield. So I think you can see that. Maybe that's your guide, right, Michelle? You know what Baker Mayfield can do this offense, and Mayfield was a very useful fantasy person there of the borderline of QB1 and QB2. So if he can get there, I'm not going to say he's going to rocket up there. I mean, Justin Herbert may go up a few notches there away from QB2 borderline and maybe into the QB1 realm. But Bryce Young, I think his jump, maybe getting into like QB 15 to 20, right? That would still be a massive improvement for him, and it would make him a lot worthier in, especially in situations 2 QB or super flex leagues.
Yeah, I don't know. I won't be shocked if he gets up there into the quarterback 12 range.
Yeah, okay.
And if he
We'll
can't,
watch it.
he probably will be gone, because if you're a first overall pick with these weapons and this offense, like,
He's going to be available. We'll just say
you gotta,
that.
you gotta produce.
Yeah, we will get into, I guess, 4 more players here. We actually have a couple of wide receivers and running backs each in our next 2 segments here as our silver and bronze medal winners for help from the 2024 NFL Draft. All right, this episode of Locked On Fantasy Football, as Michelle told you at the top, brought to you by Monopoly Go. It is really a fun game, and if you're competitive, and Michelle said how competitive she is, well, I like to win too if I'm going to be playing a game. Really, Monopoly Go is a throwback to me because you can do so much here that goes beyond the traditional game, but also has some of those aspects as well. You can team up with friends for time tournaments where you work together to build up each other's boards. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock. That's old school game I used to play with the board and all that, collecting the stickers, and that's what you can still do. Collect those stickers, trade with friends to complete albums for big prizes. There's cool new playing pieces to travel the boards with, and you have also hilarious emojis there as you're taunting your friends, trash talking them, smashing their buildings, or heisting their vaults. So all kinds of fun element there with gaming that you can get into. Plus, Monopoly Go lets you check out new and exciting things every day with constantly changing tournaments and challenges. A ton include their own unique mini games like digging for treasure or a robot pachinko machine. Yeah, that sounds fun. There's always new time events that help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you win or rent frenzies. There's always something fun to discover as you compete in Monopoly Go. So get off the bench and go download it now. It's free on Google Play or the App Store. Again, game on for Monopoly Go.
Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting. Make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, Vinny, it is time to hand out our silver medal for second best veteran winner after the 2024 NFL Draft. Who are you giving the silver medal to?
Yeah, this show's getting me excited for the Olympics, so I'll say that with gold, silver, and bronze, so that's great. But you'll like my silver medal because he belongs to a team that's on your T-shirt. It is Najee Harris of the Steelers. I mean, look at this offensive line, what's happened in the past 2 years. They added Broderick Jones, the first-round pick, and Isaac Seumalo of the Eagles in free agency. This year, they go out and get the starting center everyone is screaming for them to get. Zach Frazier has been talked about as maybe the best pick in the entire draft based on where he was selected here. They passed in the first round, but they ended up with Frazier. That was amazing. And they got Troy Fautanu there. You can probably start at right tackle as they flip Broderick Jones to left tackle. So we're getting nerdy with the offensive line, but offensive line is tailored to getting the running back going. I mean, Fautanu is a very good run blocker that's going to be playing on the outside. You have Seumalo. You have now Frazier blocking well inside. This is a very good offensive line all of a sudden. It was terrible just 2 years ago, but now the investment from GM Omar Khan is real. So you like that for Najee Harris. They also had a playmaker in short space in Roman Wilson. So that's something you can look at as well to upgrade this offense. So this is looking really good for Najee Harris because we know the Steelers with Arthur Smith, they're going to still be a run first team as much as possible. You know what Mike Tomlin wants to do? He wants to play defense at a very high level, clean it up, and close out games with running game. That's his ideal scenario. He's a little bit old school, but he knows where his strength is, the defense, running game. And what you're going to have out of that is also Russell Wilson. This is going to be thrown back to Russell Wilson's early days. You're almost rebooting him, resurrecting him as a quarterback. So what did you do there? Play a lot of great defense, run the ball, set up some awesome play action shots to George Pickens and Roman Wilson downfield. You also have Calvin Austin at speed to burn. So there's actually been a specific plan. If you look at it all come together, and we've been down on Arthur Smith, but I think this style of offense is better for him. And keep in mind, Arthur Smith got the job in Atlanta because he got Derrick Henry going to elite status here. So I also like the fact that they don't have a lot of pass catchers, and we know Jalen Warren and Najee Harris are going to be the backfield guys, so you can see some targets there as well. So everything's lined up. The blocking is better. The offense is better. The quarterback is legit. The scheme is better. The percentage of runs are better. So everything is really lined up well for Najee Harris this offseason. And I hope you agree, and I hope you're excited after the great Steelers draft for a second straight year.
Oh, the draft was so good. I'm so excited. And you're so right. This offseason has been great for Najee Harris's fantasy outlook for next year. I mean, Arthur Smith is a great ad for Najee. They're going to run a ton. They're going to use play action, which will help open up this run game as well. And Russell Wilson being there instead of Kenny Pickett will definitely keep defenses a little bit more honest. That's huge for him. And then, Dan Moore is the worst right tackle in the league per PFF, not just according
no more,
to me.
because he's not
He is, yeah. And they replaced that. Mason Cole, one of the worst centers in the league. They replaced that. So huge upgrades there. I am completely with you. No excuse for Najee not to be a top 10 fantasy running back this year. There really isn't. He needs to get it done. Now, my silver medal is going to go to Zay Flowers. I did say before the draft, I actually wouldn't mind if the Ravens added an early wide receiver. I don't think that hurts Zay Flowers all too much. But then they didn't end up taking a wide receiver until the 4th round in Devontae Walker. Now, Walker adds some height and speed, and maybe he gets some targets. But Zay Flowers easily led this offense last year in percentage of targets at 23%. The next closest was Odell Beckham at 13.4%. He's now off the team. I mean, I guess he could resign because he's not on a team yet, but he's not there anymore. So I do expect Zay Flowers to be the heavy lead on this team in targets. I know Mark Andrews will get his. He missed almost half the season. He'll get his, but I think in this new offensive system, they really do want to focus more on passing more, getting the ball to, speedster wide receivers, especially in Zay Flowers, who can just do crazy things after the catch, right? You can bring any catch home for a touchdown. So, and we also saw that at the end of last year, they started to trust him more. From weeks 12 through 18, he averaged 17.3 points per game in PPR leagues. And that's with scoring 1 point in week 15. So he had a game where he scored 1 point and was still averaging over 17 points per game over the last 7 weeks of the season. They really didn't add anyone to compete against him, except the only thing they added was Derrick Henry on the offense, which should push defenses up even more, make them more worried about the Ravens run game, which will allow even more space for Zay Flowers. So with Zay Flowers, with his skill set and his just how explosive he can be, I expect him to have a really, really nice season. Maybe it's not consistent because of the type of player he is, but I do expect a handful of huge blow up games from him this year.
Yeah, and you look at this atmosphere, they did bring back actually Nelson Aguilar, and they extended Rashad Bateman. So they kind of kept things the way they were at receiver, except Beckham. He was the wild card. I think they're hoping that Walker can kind of replace him as the occasional big play threat in the offense, a little bit more upside and youth there. And keep in mind, Beckham was getting older. So they needed maybe to get a little younger at that other spot. But Bateman, I think, is important because he may not be the most productive, but he's a guy that can line up on the other side and make some plays, which draws a little bit of attention. I don't know, a defense is going to say, we got to stop Zay Flowers. So they look at Flowers and Bateman as kind of being equal here. So he's a different type of body as well. So that's good for the coverage to open things up. So you do need that extra help, but I think he has enough where I think you want that sweet spot of don't add too many mouths to feed, but just have enough to deflect attention. Even with Mark Andrews and these receivers, I think that'll happen. So Zay Flowers, you're absolutely right. I mean, this guy already has a lot of buzz. Biggest thing, he avoided any trouble things that are going to keep him off the field and play. That may not be the case for your last pick. I'm going to spoil it there, but maybe we will talk about it on the other side of this, right? People that were hurt. Zay Flowers wasn't hurt by that, but there is somebody that might have been hurt by that with the off-field stuff. So Flowers intact. He got through that. He's good to go. And I'm excited to see what he can do in year two. This is a very, of course, explosive, dynamic talent who's just getting started. So we have two more players to talk about there in our final segment. I'm excited to see you've picked there at running back, as I will go wide receiver in the final segment.
Yep, we'll give our bronze medal winner out right after the break. It's playoff time in the NBA and NHL. Baseball's in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every game. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's a $150 win or lose. Bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all on an app that is safe, secure, and easy to use. I got you your win last week if you listened to me and took the 76ers to beat up on the Knicks in game 3. But if you missed out, my favorite bet for today is the 76ers again. Their point spread's at +4 against the Knicks in game 5. This is an elimination game for the 76ers. They have to win. Embiid will get it done. What are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Okay, we're going to hand out our bronze medal winner for a veteran, a guy that is a veteran that ended up in a fantastic spot after free agency and after the 2024 NFL draft. Who is your bronze medal winner, Vinny?
Yeah, this was an easy choice for me, and I wanted to make sure we talked about him as Terry McLaurin. He finally has a receiver or a quarterback that's going to take advantage of him as a receiver. So, and he also has some receiving help. We got some more with Luke McCaffrey, and in the offseason, they also added Austin Eckler and Zach Ertz. Now you say, okay, there's a few mouths to feed here, but the biggest problem with Terry McLaurin last year was that Sam Howell could not get him the ball and did not have a good connection with him. I'm much more confident that Jaden Daniels will say, this is the guy that I need to trust as my alpha. I need to target him all over the field. And if you also go back to Cliff Kingsbury, this happened before when he had Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins. Those guys were connecting left and right. He was the main guy, and McLaurin is that type of receiver where he's complete. You can get open all over the field. Dodson is still growing. He still is trying to find his way as a deep threat here. Luke McCaffrey's a rookie. He's trying to fill in the Curtis Samuel role. So Samuel, that role won't cut in to McLaurin, especially with a different quarterback. So that's great where you don't have to worry about Howell. We saw last year, as we talked about, Jacoby Brissett immediately started taking advantage of McLaurin. So this is the thing that I'm sure Kingsbury has seen, that, hey, this is our best receiver. Why isn't he getting the ball in a lot more situations? And now you got a big arm quarterback who can take advantage of McLaurin's speed, get it to him downfield, maybe even have a little bit more red zone success that McLaurin has struggled with a little bit because of his quarterback play. So I think things will open up. It's going to spread it out a little bit, get some other weapons you got to worry about here. The Commanders, again, are still going to go to their most experienced guy in the receiving core, and then you'll have Zach Ertz and Eckler, but it'll be trickle down from there. I think this team and the strength of Daniels is running and throwing downfield deep. So in that case, that's really good for McLaurin because maybe less checkdowns to Eckler and Ertz. He'll keep some things alive here to throw downfield and really look to target and find McLaurin wherever he is on the field. So I think this is very parallel here. Again, Murray and Hopkins, I think you have that sequel here, veteran wide receiver with a rookie quarterback, kind of duplicates itself here with Cliff Kingsbury. So I'm excited. Terry McLaurin has kind of hung on there. He's only rated as a wide receiver 3. We've been down on him because of what we've seen before, but I think this is a guy that's been waiting to be unlocked up to the level of his talent. I think it finally happens here with Daniels.
Yeah, this is, it's hard to say this isn't his best quarterback that he's played with now throughout his career. And I know it's hard, like we haven't seen him on the field. We don't know what he's going to be like in the NFL, but I mean, Terry McLaurin has played with some really bad quarterbacks. And one thing about Jaden Daniels is he always hit Malik Neighbors just right in the bucket on those deep plays. I mean, go look at all of Malik Neighbors' top plays, and Jaden Daniels is getting that perfectly where it needs to go. If you do that for Terry McLaurin, he's going to destroy defenses. So yes, I 1,000% agree with you on that. I have to go with my boy Zack Moss as a huge winner. I'm giving him the bronze medal. The Bengals had 10 draft picks, and they didn't take a single running back. That is pretty shocking. Now, they signed Moss day one of the tampering period. They were willing to just say, bye-bye, Joe Mixon. They were just going to cut him. Then they ended up trading him. But they just completely changed those two out. They bolstered up their offensive line even more this offseason. They signed Trent Brown in free agency. They used the first-round pick on a tackle. And just the Bengals have been a team that prefers to feed one guy. And I know there's some people out there who are high in Chase Brown. I don't really get it. All right. He was a 5th-round pick last year, had 0 rushing touchdowns as a rookie, never played more than 18 snaps in a game, had 1 single carry inside the 10-yard line. And listen to this. So he had 44 carries last year, 179 rushing yards. He averaged 4.1 yards per carry, which is already in general not great, right? But he did this while having a 31-yard run and a 27-yard run. That means Chase Brown averaged 2.9 yards per carry on 42 of his 44 carries. He lost yards on 9 of his 44 carries. He gained 1 or fewer yards on 15 of 44 carries. He led all players in the NFL in the amount of times he was stuffed. At a 20.5 stuff percentage. That means stopped at the line of scrimmage or lost yards. That led the NFL among all players with 40-plus carries last year, while Moss ranked 7th best among running backs with 150 carries last season in that category. Like, Chase Brown's not a good running back, guys. That's not a competition. He will be the change of pace back guy. 100%. He'll get in. He'll maybe break one for 25 yards once in a while. He is a change of pace. Zack Moss is the lead back. And if Moss doesn't get hurt next year, like, I don't see how he's not an RB10 with what the Bengals have given him this offseason and not adding anybody to compete against.
Yeah, that was really throwing down versus the Chase Brown truthers out there. So, but
he's not good. I don't get it. Like, I
think he's in a limited role. I think that's exactly what you expect. If you expose him too much, he's a smaller back. You just can't do that. Like, I think you have to put him out in particular situations. And again, the Bengals like that. We've seen that with Samaje Perine. He was a bigger back, but that's what they had, right? In some receiving random situations, they'd bring in Perine, but it was pretty much Joe Mixon to handle the high leverage touches, red zone, all the good stuff that gets this fantasy production, and also the check downs and other things on the early downs that you would expect. So Zack Moss, again, he definitely earned this job based on what he did with the Colts last year, filling in for Jonathan Taylor. It's not the same running back we had in Buffalo. He's healthy. He's versatile. He can do a lot of things, and we liked him a lot coming out of Utah. So this is kind of living up to the expectations that Moss has had since he entered the league. We thought he was going to be the lead guy, and they would never end up with James Cook in Buffalo. So I think it took a while. The light went on for him. Got in a good system last year with the Colts. I think he remains in a good system here with the Bengals. So I like it. I mean, just basically carry over what we know about the Bengals with different people. You have Zack Moss instead of Joe Mixon. You have Jermaine Burton, the rookie, instead of Tyler Boyd. You have a mix of tight ends that aren't CJ Uzomah from a couple years ago, just different type of guys that are in there. So it's basically the parallels that you're drawing. I know they did lose their offense coordinator, Brian Callahan, to the Titans, but a lot of their philosophies are going to stay the same under Zach Taylor. So I like having direct parallels. You know where it's going. You can look at what Mixon's production was, and you can pencil in Moss for something very similar here, playing off a healthy Joe Burrow. And keep that in mind, a healthy Joe Burrow is going to mean a lot for this offense in general, scoring more, doing things, finishing drives with the running back. So I love it here with Zack Moss. And yeah, he avoided, I think if I was going to go with the second guy, kind of avoided really the worst of it was Rachaad White. We thought they would take it back earlier in Tampa, but Moss has got to feel good about being the lead back in Cincinnati. And I think you got to feel good about him as, again, a sneaky RB1 top 12 guy in 2024.
Yeah, and an honorable mention, Ezekiel Elliott. He gets a full-time job. I mean, he's going back to his Cowboys. They didn't draft. They were just like, no, we're not going to take a running back, I guess, once they missed out on Jonathan Brooks. And now Ezekiel Elliott, I mean, I don't know how efficient he can be, but he's going to get fed this year.
Yeah, and we'll have something related to that for you when we look at the veterans hurt. So it'll be an interesting list. I think that's going to be a little disappointing because we're going to talk about some guys on the negative side on the next show. So flip it. We'll do 6 that were hurt here with the veterans. And I'm excited about these 6 guys. I'm not going to be as excited about the 6 guys we bring up on the next show.
Yep. That's it for today's show. Thank you to everyone for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen every day. Every day, as like Vinnie just mentioned, we will be back tomorrow talking about the top 6 biggest losers, veteran losers after the 2024 NFL draft. Don't miss it. Bye, y'all.